Hello and welcome to the second video tutorial from Crafty Bev's Bookfolding in conjunction with Newbie Pattern Designers and Folders Facebook group. First of all, I'll say hello to Tracy Hayes, the creator of the great Newbie Pattern Designers Facebook group, and the other admin, her husband Chris, Tracy Martindale, Ro Brett, Brief Laycock, who's the custom pattern designer, and Karen Reed, who makes all the magnetic rulers, which you've really got to try, they're really good. Tracy Hayes has her own Etsy book folding pattern shop, which I've probably got over 100 patterns of from, and they're really good patterns. Her Etsy shop is called 831 Folds, 831 Folds, and there's some really good patterns on there. Also check out the Newbie Pattern Designers and Folders Facebook page to join the group. There's loads and loads of free files on there for you to try out as well. So this tutorial is about doing a basic book fold. So the tools you need first of all for a basic book fold is a pencil. I've got a mechanical pencil, just because they're very fine and you can really get a more precise measurement. A bone folder for ironing out the creases in the folds that you do, so you can get really nice sharp folds on them. A ruler up to 30 centimetres. What I've done with mine, I've put some foam tape on the end of it because the knot starts about half a centimetre onto it, so I've just put some foam tape around it, so that when I put it on the book it butts right up to the edge of the book, which makes it a lot easier for me. I also use, for when I'm doing the folding part, I use a 15 centimetre ruler, because when it's on my lap tray it doesn't overhang on the lap tray, so it lies flat against the book, so I just fold it to that. This is a new ruler I've bought from Homebase. I think it was $4.99. It's like a carpenter's kind of ruler, and it's got this plastic bit attached to it, so this exactly goes up to the 0 on it, and it's got the inches on it, and it's also got the centimetres on it. That's a really good one. I've just started using that. I think I use a new ruler every week. I try out a different one. I haven't tried out the Incra T rule yet. That's my next thing on my list to try. And this is one of the magnetic rulers, which Karen Reed makes kindly for people on the Facebook page. These are quite easy to use. I will do a separate tutorial on using the magnetic ruler, but today I'll just do it with a basic plastic ruler. Right, so I'm going to get my book. So what I do with all my books is whenever I get them, they're not called a book title, they're just a page number. So this book's called 418. So first of all, you've got your pattern. This is just because I had it printed off already, I'll just use this. It's a Debbie Moore, from a Debbie Moore CD, which was one of the very first book folds I ever did. I'm just trying to do it. So down there you see the folds. So you'll have like number 1, number 2. Now the thing you've got to remember for the folds is one fold equals 2 pages of a book. So because you'll have page 1 on one side and on the back of it is page 2. So one fold equals 2 pages. So that's the one thing you've got to remember. So for example, if you see a pattern that says it has 224 folds, that means you need a book with at least 448 pages. So to start it off, so there's the spine of the book there. So I turn it around to face me so that the bit where you read from, so say the chapter title or whatever, is on your left hand side. So, but you'll open it out that way towards you, and then so that's how you start that off. So to do your basic thing, like when you look at your pattern, and say for example there's 100 folds on your pattern, you would need a book with at least 200 pages. It doesn't mean you have to go out and find a book with exactly 200 pages. You can get a book that's got 300 pages. And then what you would do there, as you say, right, 200, I need 200 pages, there's 100 pages spare, so 100 divided by 2 equals 50, so you'd start on page 50, so that the pattern goes exactly in the middle of the book, and then you've got some pages at the end, which you can either tear out, or you can fold them in and do little curling and all sorts of things with them. It depends what you want to do, really. Right, so I'm going to basically show you first of all how to measure out the pages. So you get your ruler, and remember, so just think the top of your book is on your left hand side, the bottom of your book is on your right hand side, and the spine is facing towards you. I mean, when I usually do it, I've got a little lap tray and I sit in front of the TV. I've actually got my lap tray down the side, so I'll just show you my lap tray. So I've just got that, and it's like a little breakfast tray, and I'll sit on the sofa, put my book in front, and I'll just sit there. I tend to mark the whole book, then fold it, but some people like to mark off sections and fold it to make sure that the pattern's coming out okay or whatever, but I find it's easier to just mark out the whole book and then just fold it. So, I've got my ruler, so you put that up, right up against the book. Obviously, because I've put the foam tape, the zero matches right up, which also means that you don't have to worry about not taking your ruler off the book, because it automatically will always but right up back to the same line again. So on my pattern it says fold 1, I need to mark 4.4 and 4.7. So I'd find 4.4, mark it with my pencil, and 4.7. So I've marked that, and that's the first fold marked there on 4. Let's make sure I'm doing it. Yeah, so that's 4.4 and that's 4.7. Now I tend to work straight from my iPad. So what I do tend to do is, before I start, I should have said this before, but I usually go through and I just mark, like I double check the pattern, because some patterns start saying fold, saying like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's easy. You just go through, mark that one as 1, next one 2, next one 3. This is also a really good thing to do, because if you get mixed up in your pattern or something doesn't look right, you can go exactly back to that page 3. Be like, oh, that looks a little bit out. Let's look at fold number 3, and then you remeasure. Be like, oh, I was actually out a little bit, or you can alter it or whatever, so you know exactly where it is on the pattern. Also, if something like if the telephone rings or you've got to answer the door, you know exactly what fold you've gotten up to. So I usually measure it and mark out the pages. You get other patterns which will say like odd numbers. It will say 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So double check your pattern before you start marking out the page numbers on your book. Because you don't want to go marking it saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then go to start the pattern and then you actually realise that the pattern says 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. It all depends on the pattern designer, really. So I go through, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I would do that. The ones that say 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, you would do exactly the same, except you just mark your pages 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, because on the back of 1 is 2, on the back of 3 is 4, on the back of 5 is 6, and so on. So it's exactly the same, and I know there's a lot of people ask that question on the bookfolding group. That's probably one of the biggest questions that gets asked, and even I think when I started out bookfolding, it was one of the first questions I asked, and then once I realised, I thought, oh yeah, that's quite easy when you actually remember. So I go through, I mark all my things. So I'll do 2 or 3, and then I'll show, because I've already prepared another one which I've started doing. So number 2 says it's 14.8 and 15.1. So you find 14.8 and 15.1. 3 says 4.4 and 4.7. 5, so it's 14/8 and 15/1. And then the next one says 4/4 and 4/8, so I'd mark off 4.4 and 4.8. So I've done about five of my first folds there. If you're working from a sheet, what I would suggest is before you lift your ruler, like mark the number and then tick it off the sheet. Mark your number, tick it off the sheet so you know exactly where you're on the pattern. I tend to work straight from the iPad, and because I've already numbered my pages from the pattern, makes it a lot easier for me because I know exactly where I am, and if I put it down and want to pick it up the next day, I know exactly what part I've gotten to on the pattern, which makes it a lot easier. Right, so that's how you measure it. So always measure it, the top of the book, from left. First mark is on the left, your second mark is always on the right. So you always got to think the top of your book, where the title is or the chapter number, should be on your left hand side. So I've done the first few marks there. Some patterns will say on their half folds, or it will say no folds. A half fold, which I will just show you a half fold. Are you doing the same? Because I'm not actually folding this one. This one's just right. So I'll put the book back because otherwise I'll confuse you if I do it. So a half fold is, so this is the page I'm folding here. You get this corner, bring it into the spine, like that, and then you just get that one and bring it into the spine again. So then you get a triangle, like that, and then you get that triangle. You tend to find a lot of half folds and no folds, because I would say a lot of the time when it's no folds, it's usually that you've got to do a half fold on it most of the time. And you tend to find that there might be 4 or 5 of these you have to do on the pattern, and usually that's on a pattern where there's a word, where this would be a space between the letters, the half folds. It would kind of give a little bit of a gap so that the numbers, letters or numbers are all separated out. So that's a half fold. I'll just bring that over again. So I'll just do one more of those. So I always do it from the left into the spine, crease it, back out, and then from the right side back into the spine, which will give you a triangle, and then take the end of that triangle and then just bring it back into the spine again. Right, so that's a half fold there. So I've got 2 half folds there. Usually you'd get between, I'd say 3 and 5 sometimes on a pattern, usually where there's a word, and they are like kind of act as spacer pages. Right, just thinking, there's another one I was going to do. Half folds, no folds. Sometimes on a pattern, for example, it will say 4.4 and 4.4. So what you would do is you just measure 4.4. So you just measure 4.4. And what I tend to do is I just put times 2 and I put that underneath, like that. So then I know once I get to that page, I know I've got to do both points so they both meet up to that line, basically to make a point. I'm just looking at, because I've written some stuff up on the wall which I'm looking at. So I've done starting point, pages, fold, and right, so now on to the folding. So I've got another book which I've already started doing over here. I've only done about 10 folds. Now, a good, like, you want to hold your pages out of the way. You can either use a piece of ribbon, which I sometimes do, or fold. You don't want to use something that's too tight because it can kind of bend the page out of shape, and I usually just do that, a bit of ribbon to hold the pages, and as you go, just tuck the pages underneath. But I've discovered a new favourite one. I bought my daughter some those big massive punch balloons from the pound shop, and they have these huge elastic bands. which are really quite nice and loose, so they fit, and I can pretty much do the whole book fold and it will hold the whole lot and it won't bend any of it because it's quite a big band. But that's off the little punch balloons off the pound shop. Right, so now I'm going to fold, so I'll just show you with a big ruler because that's probably what most of you've got is the big ruler. So you start from the left, the first line on the left, let me see. Right, so I'm going to be doing that very first mark. So you bring your ruler in from the left, on the left or on the left line, and then you just get your corner and fold it in so it meets the ruler, and then do that, and then I would get my bone folder. These are brilliant because they really crease your pages really nicely and flatten them so you get really nice crisp folds. Then I just sort of crease along it like that, and then the second one. So that's the very first mark that I marked out, and then the second one I would place my ruler there right on the line and then bring it in. Now you'll find on a lot of pages, because you want it to come up flush to the ruler, I'm a bit of a perfectionist like that, and I like, now you can do it like that where you just bring it to meet the ruler so that it touches the point and crease it, and then this little piece what hangs over, which I'll just show you here, that piece there you can fold back like that. But what I tend to do is I just tear it up a little tiny bit, just like 1 or 2 centimetres like that, so that when I do this mark, I mean a lot of people don't do this because they don't want to destroy any of the book or anything, but I like everything to be exact, so that way, because I've cut this little bit here, it folds right the way right up to the ruler, which means I get a much nicer crease on it, and it makes the folds look really nice when they're all done. And then I kind of go right into the spine bit there because you've got this little bit of overhang on the corner bit. So if I just show you, so that's my page there. I tore it a little bit here, up to here. I'd say that's, actually I'll just get my ruler and just measure that. You don't need to, it's not like you need to rip the whole lot. So I would say that's for about 3 centimetres I've torn up. But I mean it doesn't damage the book, it doesn't make the book fall apart or anything, so it's fine to do that. If your preference is that you'd rather do that where it just meets to the ruler and you fold it back, you can do that. The only trouble I find is sometimes when you do that, you can get, like, see I've just done it there, with doing that you can rip a little bit, that's part of the main point that would show in the book fold. So that's why I tend to just do it like that and then bring it, you know, tear it, bring it right up to the ruler, fold it. Right, now this part here, see I've still got a little bit of overhang here, there, that little bit there. So I just cut those bits off because I don't like the books to look bulky. It can sometimes distort the pattern a little bit if you've got a lot of those. Just sort of give it a little cut. You don't have to be really, really precise cutting it. This won't show. The only thing that really shows on the fold is the actual point bits here, because that's the parts that make up the pattern, these bits. So I'll just fold that. So that's my first fold. I'd usually be 10 times quicker doing this, but yeah, so now that's the first fold done there. Now I'm going to do the second fold. Now I can notice with this one straight away, the second fold starts right the way down here, on the very first mark on the second fold. So that tells me that I'm going to probably tear downwards the other way, so that it meets the ruler. So that's what I would do there. So I'll just get my page, just a little tiny bit. That's all I need to do. And now it meets there, right up to the ruler. See if I can lift it up and show. There you go, so it's touching the ruler, and that's where it's, so I've torn up, that's how much I've torn up, but remember it won't it won't damage the pattern or anything, it will just make it look better at the end. So fold it there, and then I'll just push that in like that. Right, so this is the bit that I will cut off. Remember, you don't have to cut it, it's just my preference that I like to do. There, so that's the first part of that done. And you just sharpen the crease like that. I would also say, sometimes, I'm just going up to the second line now. So I've done the left hand line, which was the one I've just done. Now I'm doing the second one, which is there. So I'll just put my ruler up to that line there. Yeah, what I was about to say was sometimes the effect you can get from a pattern can be different depending on what book you've got, because the books have different thicknesses of pages. For example, you've got something like a dictionary, the pages are really, really thin, but a book like this, the pages are a lot thicker. Right, so that's the first and second fold done. I'll have to put that over there. So I'm just going to get my elastic band, and what you can do, the elastic band will hold the pages that you've folded. Right, so I'm just going to do this a bit quicker this time, so I'm doing the left. And I'm doing the right. I can notice I need to tear off again there. Fold that bit back there, and that bit I will cut off. And you can sit there and you can do 10, 20, 30 folds and then do the cutting bits after, but I tend to just sit there and do it. Right, so that's 3 folds done. So this one I'm going to need to tear again. So start on the first line at the left, tear it in a tiny bit, you don't need to do that. So I'm not going to cut the rest of the pages because it would just make the video too long, so I'll leave them, and then I'll do the right, and what I'll do is I'll do maybe 8 to 10 folds, and then I'll lift it up and I'll show you what the pattern looks like. Believe it or not, I've only been book folding for about 6 months. And I saw it on Create and Craft channel. I saw Debbie Moore doing it on a book folding show, and I thought, oh, that looks really good, because I always wondered, it might sound a bit of a wally, but actually, before I saw how it was done, I thought it was done with a little craft knife, and I thought they'd sculpted the pages out of it. I didn't realise it was just marked and folded. I just thought it looked amazing. But I've been doing card making for like maybe 5 or 6 years now. So, and I like book folding because, wow, I can decorate. It's the decorating part I like doing, I think, and I'd like seeing the pattern appearing. It's brilliant when you see the pattern appearing before your eyes. You think, oh, I made that, and everyone looks at it and thinks, oh, it looks so complicated. How do you do that? And they think you're so clever, but actually, quite easy once you know how to do it. There are a couple of other different methods of doing book folding. There's the graph method, where you put the piece of paper underneath. But I do actually have a Peerless Designs book folding, which uses the graph method. I think because I'd already started doing off this method, which is called the mark and measure method, I found it hard to get on with the other one, because I'd already learned how to do this one. There is also another way of doing book folds, and you can create really quite wonderful things. I think Ruth Laycock will be adding a few files to the Newbie Pattern Designers and Folders Facebook group, where these are cutting patterns. Basically, you download the template, draw it onto your page, and then you cut it, and then you'll get a shape. I've seen one that I really like that I can't wait to do, which is actually a little Christmas bell, and you get like a folded bell shape, and you can do Christmas trees and all sorts. I will do another tutorial on how to fold a hedgehog, a bird cage, a vase and a fairy house. Right now it's getting a bit easier on this bit because now the marks are both up towards. Right, so remember I'm starting from the left into the ruler, fold it and then crease it with your bone folder. Right, I think I'll make this the last one. Hopefully there'll be enough of the pattern there for me to show you. Right, and then what I do is I'll get a section that I've just done, so say I'll do 20 to 30. I'll then just get them, just go along the creases, just again with my fingers, just to flatten them out a bit more. Right, so I've done, this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, this is 9 folds I've done here. So if I turn the book round, that's the first 9 folds of the book done, and then obviously as you work your way through you'll get a whole pattern. It's quite brilliant, I love it. I've got a book done here, I've done here, that was done exactly the same way, following the pattern. This is the Taj Mahal, which I'm going to decorate. Yeah, so that was done exactly the same way as that was done. I think that's about it. So I'll just do a little quick recap. The only tools you really need is a pencil. This is what they call a mechanical pencil, bone folder and a ruler. So all my books I pick up from a charity shop or local libraries, sometimes do sales. Most of my books I decorate with wallpaper samples that I get from Homebase, B&Q, wherever I go. I tend to take a pair of scissors and an elastic band with me, keep it in my bag so I can take some wallpaper. So I think I've actually covered most of the basics. So basically you get your ruler, you get your book, first measurement it will say 4.4 and whatever, so you mark at those 2 places, fold in from the left and the second one in from the right. Always start, your first fold will be on your left hand side and the spine of the book facing towards your body. So that is basically, it is very easy to do. I'd like to thank the Newbie Pattern Designers and Folders Facebook group. Go over and join them. My blog is Bev's Bookfolding blog at blogspot.co.uk, and you can buy a lot of Tracy's patterns on Etsy. It's called 831 Folds. So I'll just say bye bye. I bet you're all waving back now.